Welcome back to the channel. Hope you all are doing great, staying healthy, and living life with good vibes. If you're going through something, don't bottle it up, talk to your bestie or someone you trust, 'cause keeping it all inside is just bad news. Today's gonna be a little different though. We're not doing a manga recap this time, instead, we're diving into a manhwa. Quick heads up about this one, it's pretty fresh, with only 8 chapters out so far. The story's about a class full of students who are straight up bullying their homeroom teacher. Nobody in the class likes the guy, but they end up getting a new homeroom teacher 'cause the last one was in bad shape and had to be hospitalized. Now the question is, can this new teacher handle the pressure and make it through? But hey, before we jump into the story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So, it all kicks off with these 3 classmates who totally stand out, and they were basically the ones who started messing with their homeroom teacher. Their names are Ayaha, Ryuto, and Riku. The 3 of them were talking about their old teacher that they bullied. Riku casually drops the bomb that the teacher ended up taking his own life. Ayaha's super shocked 'cause she had no clue, and then Ryuto adds that they used to make the teacher cry. Then, Riku pulls out his phone and is like, "Yo, if I post the video of us bullying the teacher, it's gonna blow up." In the video, they've got the teacher tied up and half naked, and they are threatening him with a knife, saying they'd cut off his junk if he didn't stay quiet. The poor teacher ends up peeing himself, and they all start cracking up like it's the funniest thing ever. Ryuto said that she enjoyed it, but she refused and said that it was not true. Then Riku jumped in and said, "Hey, if the teacher's not around, we don't need to study, right?" Out of nowhere, she invites Ryuto to come over to her place, and Riku, being Riku, adds, "Yeah, and maybe we can hook up too." They were just chatting away, when suddenly the principal walks in. The whole class was instantly like, not thrilled to see him. The principal started announcing that their old homeroom teacher was in the hospital, and while he's out, they'd have a temporary replacement. But before he could finish, Riku cut in like, "Wait, our homeroom teacher's not dead yet?" The whole class cracked up. The principal tried to keep things calm, but then this one student banged on the table and shouted that the principal was annoying. The dude was freaked out. Just then, their substitute homeroom teacher walked in. She introduced herself, "Hey, I'm Kasai Koharu, 23 years old, and I'm your new homeroom teacher." The guy who banged on the table earlier suddenly seemed mesmerized by her, and honestly, the whole class was vibing with their new, hot teacher. Well, except for the girls, they weren't too happy about her. Ryuto, though, stayed quiet, deep in thought. The student next to him asked if he was as stoked about the new teacher as everyone else. But he was like, "I swear, I've seen her somewhere before." The principal, who was still afraid of the students in the class, said goodbye and gave a little message to she that there were many naughty students in this class, hopefully she would be comfortable in that class. But she didn't seem to have a problem with the condition of the class, and she would do her best for the class. One of the girls was worried about their new teacher. Mrs. Kasai reintroduced herself. She quoted a message from her junior high school teacher that her dream was to become a teacher and make her teacher proud. The girls were not happy to hear that. She started the lesson with a chemistry lesson. Before starting the lesson, Mrs. Kasai gave the students the opportunity to ask questions. Riku raised his hand and wanted to ask her. And Riku's question made the whole class laugh. He asked, "When was your first time experience?" But Mrs. Kasai responded to Riku's question calmly. She said that the word first time experience was ambiguous. She also added that the word first time experience was about sex, right? Riku, who initially wanted to tease her teacher, was confused because she was not like the teacher he had bullied. Mrs. Kasai clarified Riku's ambiguous question and said that asking questions should be clarified so that others would understand. She answered that her first experience was at 12. Riku was very shocked to hear that. Mrs. Kasai managed to retaliate against Riku, who tried to embarrass her. Seeing Riku being humiliated in return, the girls became even more unhappy with her. Ayaha, who had been unhappy with Mrs. Kasai, planned something to teach her a lesson for acting up. The lesson began. Mrs. Kasai then asked Ryuto a question. He responded by asking back, but she kept waiting for Ryuto's answer. He said in annoyance that if he could answer, Mrs. Kasai should take off her underwear, if not, he would not answer the question. The whole class cheered happily. Calmly, she said that Ryuto didn't know the answer, just say so. Rika said that Ryuto was the top of their class. He made sure once again, if the answer was correct, Mrs. Kasai had to do his request. With full confidence, he answered correctly. The whole class cheered happily because Ryuto's answer was correct and told her to do it. Again, calmly, Mrs. Kasai was able to avoid Ryuto's request. The answer given was correct, but she intelligently said that the answer was not detailed enough. Ryuto protested, but Mrs. Kasai said that the top of the class should know the detailed answer like that, so she would not do Ryuto's request. One of the students was surprised to see Mrs. Kasai humiliating the naughty students. The class ended. The three of them chatted about Mrs. Kasai who had embarrassed them. Ayaha couldn't stand her treatment of them anymore. She planned to do the same thing as their ex-homeroom teacher. But Rika refused. He was fascinated by Mrs. Kasai's beauty. If they did that again, then their homeroom teacher replacement would not be the same as Mrs. Kasai. She didn't agree with Riku's words. Ayaha angrily pulled Riku's collar. Ryuto added, "Indeed, Mrs. Kasai was very beautiful." Hearing that, she got even angrier. Ryuto with a knife in his hand stabbed it into the table and was planning something bad to Mrs. Kasai. What are the three of them really planning? Who is Mrs. Kasai really? If you are curious, go read the webtoon yourself. Maybe that's all for this video. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.